Well, first, as you know, Pakistan was never a technical ally of the United States. I mean, there was no treaty of alliance with Pakistan, but certainly over many, many years, for the last couple of decades, um, uh, we we partnered with Pakistan as appropriate to deal with the terrorist threat that still exists on that spine between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And we recognize that Pakistan is still the Pakistani people fall victim to terrorist violence coming from across that border. We recognize that, and we have, and for as long as we'll be in office here, remain committed to working with Pakistan to address those common threats and challenges. And that's not that hasn't changed. It's not going to change.
Thank you so much, sir. Jahanzaib Ali from Airby News TV, Pakistan. First of all, we're going to miss you. If you, wherever you are in State Department, Pentagon, or in the White House, you always take questions from foreign media. I really appreciate
Oh,
that.
I enjoy it. Thanks.
So we are expecting a completely new foreign policy with the upcoming Trump administration. Mr. Trump recently issued some threatening statements regarding Middle East. He also claimed that he will end the Russia-Ukraine war, and he's not in the White House yet, but things have already started improving. Hamas and Israel are near to a historic peace deal, while Zelensky expressed a desire to negotiate with Russia. So, what do you think was lacking in your administration's policy that unable to bring peace to these two regions? Thank you.
On the Middle East, we are where we are right now because of the pressure that Hamas has been under since the war began, particularly in the last several months. Sinwar's gone. Most of their leaders and fighters dead or wounded. Infrastructure destroyed. They're under incredible pressure. And now they're also incredibly isolated. They can't count on Hezbollah to come. And why is that? Because the United States under Joe Biden brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. They can't count on Iran to come to their help. Iran's in a weaker position than they've ever been. Air defense capabilities significantly degraded. Their so-called axis of resistance has certainly been dismantled. So to the degree that they couldn't even come to Assad's rescue. And I would argue that we are in the position we're in right now because of the intensive diplomacy that President Biden has implemented and executed over many, many months. And as I said earlier, if we can get a deal, you will see that the parameters of that deal are the parameters that the Biden administration started working on many, many months ago. That's why we are where we are, okay? On Ukraine, look, we have said, I don't know how many times I've said, that of course we want to see the war end. But you know what we won't do? We're not going to impose a negotiation on President Zelensky or the Ukrainian people. We want for President Zelensky, if and when he's ready to go to the negotiating table, that he goes into it with a position of strength. So we have literally moved mountains and led the world in helping Ukraine succeed on the battlefield so that if a negotiated settlement comes, he's got leverage. He's got the ability to do what any president of a country ought to do, and that is protect his sovereignty and his territorial integrity. But he gets to decide what that looks like. We don't get to decide what that looks like, and we shouldn't get to decide what that looks like. So I take issue with the premise of your question that we've somehow failed in supporting Ukraine. I would argue quite the opposite, that the United States literally led the world in helping make sure that President Zelensky and his troops had what they need to be successful. And through success on the battlefield, they'll be in a much stronger position to negotiate if and when they're ready. And also, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen a single bit of evidence, not a shred, that Mr. Putin is ready to give up the ghost and negotiate. His strategic objectives in Ukraine haven't changed. He still would like to subjugate the whole damn country. Doesn't even believe it ought to exist as a country. And how many of those strategic objectives has he achieved? None. Zero. And that's because of obviously the bravery and the courage of the Ukrainian troops on the field and the Ukrainian people who are just historically resilient, um, but also because of the United States and our leadership in the Ramstein Group and pulling together nations across the world. Did you ever imagine that countries like Japan and South Korea would be willing to support a country like Ukraine in a war against Russia? That wasn't by accident. It was because of President Biden's leadership. And it was also because those countries know that other people are watching what happens in Ukraine, like the PRC, and are trying to divine lessons from this. And so they know that what happens in Ukraine doesn't just affect Ukraine or even Europe, it affects the Indo-Pacific as well.
Can you tell us something about negotiations with the Taliban on prisoners?
No, I cannot. But all I'll say is that we have had, as you would expect we would, as the American people should expect that we would, have had conversations with the Taliban as appropriate when it comes to Americans that are wrongfully detained there. And nothing's going to stop our efforts to try to get them home with the time that we have left. But I'm not going to go into any detail.